This video is going to be about multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. By the end of this, you should be able to say, I can multiply and divide fractions and mixed numbers. We're going to start with multiplying. So there are three main steps that you need to do when you are multiplying fractions or mixed numbers. The first thing is, if there are any mixed numbers in the problem, you need to first make those improper fractions. That's always the first thing you need to do. The second step would be to multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. And the third step would be to simplify your answer and fix any improper fractions. So if you end up with an improper fraction at the end, you want to turn that back into a mixed number. So let's take a look at this first example here. This first example, there are no mixed numbers, so I don't have to worry about step one. But step two, I'm going to multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. So multiplying fractions is no problem. Top times top, top times top, and bottom times bottom. So we get 4 times 3 is 12 over 20. That's not in simplest form, so step 3 means we're going to simplify our fraction by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. In this case, I'm going to divide by 4. So we get 12 divided by 4 is 3, 20 divided by 4 is 5, 3/5 is in simplest form, and that is our answer. Now, for this problem, you also could have done something called cross-simplifying. This is completely optional. However, it very often makes your work a lot easier. Makes the number smaller, and you don't have to simplify at the end, which is very nice. So let's redo this problem, and I'm going to do it by cross-simplifying. So when you are multiplying only, it is only for multiplying that you can do this. What you're going to look for is any common factors between the numerators and the denominators. So I see here I have a 4 in the numerator and a 4 in the denominator. So each of those can be divided by 4, so that's what I'm going to do. So 4 divided by 4 gives me 1. 4 divided by 4 gives me 1. So now I have 1 times 3 is 3. 5 times 1 is 5. And I go right to the answer without having to simplify like I did here. It makes my life a lot easier a lot of times. You don't have to do it that way, but I really do encourage you to because it makes life easier. So let's take a look at another couple examples here. So what we have here is two mixed numbers multiplied times each other. So we have 1 and 5/6 times 2 and 3/5. And so what we're going to need to do is make both of those mixed numbers into improper fractions. We're going to multiply the denominator times the whole number plus the numerator in both cases. So we have 6 times 1 plus 5 gives me 11/6. And 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 gives me 13/5. So as I see, I look at this, I can't simplify, I can't cross-simplify it all, so I'm just going to multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. I just said that backwards, but across the numerator and across the denominator. So we have 11 times 13 is 143, and 6 times 5 is 30. So we end up with 143 over 30, which is clearly an improper fraction. I need to know how many times does 143, how many times does 30 go into 143. So I'm going to divide that. If you don't have to use long division, you can do it mental math. If not, long division is the way to go. So 30 goes into 143 4 times. And so 4 times 30 is 120. I'm going to subtract. And I get 23 as my remainder. So my fraction is, my mixed number is going to be 4 and 23/30. So 4 and 23/30 is my final answer because 23/30 cannot be simplified. So moving on to the next one, we've got some negatives here. Well, the rules for negatives are the same no matter what kind of numbers you have. So when we're multiplying two negatives, we get a positive answer, so I know that my answer is going to be positive when I'm done. And now I just need to figure out what that is. We have 1 and 3/4 is a mixed number. So I'm going to multiply and add to make that into an improper fraction. 2/7 is not a mixed number. That's not a problem. So we're just going to leave 2/7 as 2/7. Now, since I know my answer is already going to be positive, I can ignore the negatives from here on out. I just have to remember to put them back in my answer. That's the tricky part. So I need 4 times 1 plus 3 is 7/4 times 2/7 doesn't need to be changed. So I have two options here. I'm noticing that I can cross simplify, so I'm going to first multiply across and across, then I'll go back and cross simplify to show you how that's done. So across the numerator, we get 14, and multiplying across the denominator, I get 28. Now, the biggest common factor that goes into both of those is going to be actually 14. So I'm going to divide both of those by 14. If you didn't see 14 as the biggest factor, then what you could do is divide by 2 and divide by 7 separately. So we get 1/2, and my answer was positive, so my answer is going to be positive 1/2. Now, if you choose to, you could, this is the or, you could cross simplify. If I did that, I noticed that 7 goes into 7 and 7. So in the numerator and the denominator, they have common factors. So 7 goes into 7 one time. It goes into 7 one time. When I multiply across and across here, I get 2 over 4. And so that tells me I also, by the way, could have done common factors here. 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 4 2 times. So we could have done that as well to give me 1/2 as my answer. So taking a look at division then. So to remind you for multiplication, you're going to make any mixed numbers improper. Then you're going to multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. And then you're going to simplify or fix your answer. So taking a look at division, division is very similar to multiplication. The first step starts exactly the same. We're going to make mixed numbers into improper fractions. Then we're going to flip the second fraction. To divide by a fraction, we multiply by its reciprocal. The reciprocal is when you flip a fraction. So you make the top the bottom and the bottom the top. Step 3 would be to multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. And then step 4, fix your answer. So making improper fractions into mixed numbers and simplify. And sometimes people will say that this could be keep, change, flip. So very much like subtracting keep, change, but keep, change, flip. So we're gonna look at this first example here. We don't have any mixed numbers, so we don't have to worry about making mixed numbers into improper fractions. But we do have to flip the second fraction. So we're going to rewrite the problem. 2/3. Never, ever, ever mess with the first number. Just like subtracting negative numbers, never mess with the first number. We're going to keep this 2/3 the same. We're going to change the division to multiplication. And we're going to flip the second fraction. So we're going to change this fraction as well. We're going to make it 5/3. That's called the reciprocal. And so then we have a multiplication problem. We're just going to multiply. If I can cross simplify, but in this case I can't. So I'm going to multiply across the denominator and across the numerator. And so I get 10 over 9, which is an improper fraction. So I need to fix that. I can either see how many times 9 goes into 10 and do it long division, or I can do that by mental math. So if I do mental math, 9 goes into 10 one whole time, with 1 left over, and my denominator is going to stay the same. This is in simplest form, so I am done. Let's take a look at another example. Another few, actually. So taking a look at this example here, we have mixed numbers and we have negatives. Again, the negatives work the same way no matter what kind of numbers you're talking about. So we've got here an answer that's going to be, we have a positive divided by a negative, so we're going to get a negative answer. Whatever our answer is, it's going to be negative. And now I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I'm going to make the mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to multiply and add. So I get 10. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12 fifths. Oops. Divided by 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5 fourths. So that's my division problem. Not changing anything, not doing keep, change, flip, anything like that first. Just figuring out what my fractions are going to be. Then I'm going to go back and keep, change, flip. I'm going to keep the first fraction the same, change the division to multiplication and flip the second fraction. So I'm going to multiply by that reciprocal. Again, no cross simplifying available here, so I'm going to multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. That gives me 12 times 4 is 48. 5 times 5 is 25. So I get 48 25ths. Improper fraction. If you need to, you can do the long division to figure that out. But 25 goes into 48 one time. Almost twice, right? Because 25 times 2 would be 50, but not quite. So we're going to subtract, and that's going to give me 23 left over. So I know that my fraction is going to be 1 and 23 25ths. I knew my answer was negative way back here. So I'm going to get, I'm just going to rewrite it up here a little bit, negative 1 and 23 25ths as my final answer. In simplest form, with the negatives, all done. So let's take a look at a couple more examples, see how we can do on this. So we got a little bit of an issue for this one. We don't have any negatives, so we don't have to worry about that. But we do have, we're dividing by a whole number. What you need to remember is that one of the easiest ways to deal with this problem, not the only way, but probably one of the easiest ways, is to make sure that you're only dealing with fractions. So I can write any whole number as a fraction, any integer as a fraction, by putting it over 1. Now we've got a problem we can solve. So I have a mixed number. I'm going to make it to an improper fraction. So I've got 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8 thirds, divided by 3 over 1. Now I'm going to do my keep, change, flip, multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to keep 8 thirds the same, change the division to multiplication, and then change the fraction to its reciprocal. So instead of 3 over 1, I'm going to have 1 over 3. Now I multiply across the numerator, across the denominator, and I get 8 ninths as my answer, and lucky for me, nothing to fix there. Next one, negative 2. So we've got a negative times a negative. Tells me my answer is going to be positive. Now that I know the answer is going to be positive, I can ignore those signs completely. If you're going to forget those signs, though, you need to make sure that you drag them with you through the whole problem. Otherwise, you can just figure out whether it's positive or negative at the beginning and be done with it. Well, I can't divide, I could divide by a whole number, but it's much easier to write that as a fraction. So I have negative 2 over 1. So I'm going to, I don't have any I don't have any mixed numbers to change, so this is not too bad. So I have 2 over 1, 1, not 3. So 2 over 1. Change the division to multiplication, so keep, change, flip. Instead of 1 over 4, I'm going to have 4 over 1. Multiply across the numerator, across the denominator. Again, I just said that backwards from the arrows. Across the numerator, across the denominator, I get 8 over 1, which is the same as 8. My answer was positive, so that is my answer. Not too bad. Multiplying and dividing fractions, not nearly as much work as finding a common denominator and doing all that. At least it doesn't feel that way. And so just to sum up what we've done, for adding and subtracting, here's the deal. We got 2 major rotten things you could have to do for fractions. You either have to find a common denominator or you have to make mixed numbers into improper fractions. You never have to do both in the same problem. You can, it's not wrong, but you never have to. So common denominator for adding and subtracting, yes, we do. This is, and by the way, this is on the bottom of the front page of your notes. So yes, we do need a common denominator when we're adding and subtracting fractions. But we do not need a common denominator for multiplying or dividing. So we don't have to do that bit of nastiness for multiplying or dividing. We do have to make improper fractions for multiplying and dividing. That's what we were just doing. But we don't need to do that for adding and subtracting. Now, multiply by the reciprocal. Do we have to flip? When do we have to flip? Only for division. We flip for division. So we don't need to make it reciprocal for multiplication or division. Multiplication or addition and subtraction. If we do, we're going to get it wrong. All right, that's our video. Hopefully it wasn't too bad.